We all have these little daily habits, right? The ones that feel totally harmless. But what if, just maybe, some of those routines are actually making us, well, a little less sharp? Let's dive into some of the most common habits that might be holding your mind back.
I mean, it's a wild thought, isn't it? The idea that the stuff you do on autopilot every single day could actually be dimming your ability to think, to focus, to learn. The good news is, this is way more in our control than you might think.
So first off, let's redefine what we even mean by intelligence, yeah? This isn't about some IQ score you got stuck with in school. It's much more like a muscle. It's about how you handle information, how you train your brain to think clearly, and really, it all comes down to your daily habits.
All right, so where do we start? Well, let's kick things off with a habit that's so common, most of us don't even realize we're doing it anymore. I'm talking about that constant, almost reflexive need for distraction. You know the feeling, right? You've got like 2 minutes of downtime, and what happens? Your hand just instinctively reaches for your phone. You're refreshing a feed, opening a new tab. Our brains have basically been trained to run away from boredom, always chasing that next little dopamine hit. And what this does is it conditions our minds for instant gratification, and that just slowly chips away at our ability to focus on anything for the long haul. So we've got to totally reframe what boredom is. It's not the enemy we think it is. Actually, it's the fertile ground where your intelligence really gets to grow. Think about it. When your mind is quiet, that's when it finally has the space to connect weird ideas, solve those problems nagging at the back of your head, and spark some real creativity. Let's be honest, those big aha moments rarely happen when you're mindlessly scrolling, right?
Okay, so how do you get that mental space back? You start small. Seriously, baby steps. The next time you're waiting in line at the coffee shop or just walking down the street, resist that urge. Don't touch your phone. Just be there for a minute. Let your mind wander. This isn't about doing nothing. It's about giving your brain the quiet time it's absolutely starving for to do its best work. Okay, so we've talked about quieting the noise inside our heads. Now let's talk about the noise we create outside our heads. This brings us to habit number 2, talking way more than we listen.
It really comes down to a fundamental choice, doesn't it? What's your goal? If your goal is just to seem smart, you talk. You interrupt people, you argue just to win, you try to dominate the conversation. But if your goal is to actually become smarter, you do the opposite. You listen, you ask questions, you soak it all in. You're basically operating from this super powerful idea that every single person you meet knows something you don't.
See, real intelligence isn't about having all the answers. It's about having the humility to know that you don't. You ever notice how the quietest person in the room is often the one learning the most? That's because they're busy observing, processing. Listening isn't passive at all. It's an active hunt for information. So here's a little challenge for you, a simple way to practice this. In your next conversation, just try to consciously pause. Before you jump in with your own take on things, ask a thoughtful question instead. That one tiny shift moves you from broadcasting mode to receiving mode. And trust me, receiving mode is where all the real learning happens.
All right, so becoming a better listener, avoiding distraction, both of those things take effort, right? They're not easy. And that feeling of struggle brings us right to the heart of our third habit, our instinct to just avoid hard things. You know that moment? You're starting a new book or a tough project at work or trying to learn a new skill, and it gets difficult, and you feel that pull to just quit. We call it laziness, but a lot of the time it's something deeper. It's fear. It's the fear of looking stupid, of not being good enough, of failing. And so we run away from the very thing that would help us grow. But here's the thing. That's a total misunderstanding of how our brains work. The brain is just like a muscle. It's not going to get stronger unless you challenge it. If you only ever do the easy stuff, your mind never gets a real workout. That feeling of struggle, that's not a sign to stop. That is proof, literal proof, that growth is happening.
So that moment you feel kind of dumb, that moment of confusion where you're just not quite getting it, that's not failure. That is the exact moment your brain is building new connections. It's literally the feeling of you getting smarter in real time. So the key is to lean into that feeling, not run away from it.
All these things we've talked about, embracing boredom, listening more, tackling challenges, they all require one thing, an open mind. And that leads us to our final, and maybe the sneakiest habit of them all, the quiet little belief that we already know everything we need to know.
The second you think, yep, I've got it all figured out, that's the second you stop growing. You just slam the door shut. Curiosity just dies on the vine. And what happens is rigid opinions start to replace real understanding, and your thinking just gets, well, stale and brittle. But the smartest people you'll ever meet, they do the complete opposite. They operate from a place of what's called intellectual humility. They keep that beginner's mindset, you know? They're always asking questions. They're constantly testing their own beliefs, not just other people's. And it's that humility that keeps their minds alive and open and always, always growing. So when you step back and look at all of this, a really powerful idea starts to take shape. And it's this: intelligence isn't some genetic lottery ticket you either won or lost. It's something that is built, or, yeah, broken, by the things you do every single day.
Let's just put it all together real simple. Constant distraction, that kills your focus. Talking more than you listen, that kills learning. Avoiding the hard stuff, that kills your growth. And pride, that feeling that you know it all, that completely kills your curiosity. Every single one of these habits is a direct hit on a crucial part of your intelligence.
And you know what's so great about this? It means you don't have to force yourself to get smarter. It's not about adding more stuff. It's about getting out of your own way. If you can just work on removing even one of these habits, you give your natural intelligence the space it needs to just come to the surface.
So I'll leave you with this one last question to think about. Seriously, ask yourself this. When was the last time you truly, genuinely changed your opinion on something important? And if you can't remember, well, that might not be a sign that you're always right. It might just be a sign that you stopped growing.